So, when I first started teaching ESL, I had about 20 students in a classroom that varied in level from entering all the way up through commanding practically in the same room. And I had to teach all of them. I had to figure this out. So, I asked the teacher who taught the students before me, "How did you organize your time?" And he told me, "I do 3 days of ESL instruction, and then I do 3 days of study hall." And we just flip flop the schedule with all at times those 5 levels of students. So in my mind, that it was just a lot. So um, I ended up being very confused as to what I should do with my time. And really, it was a balance of the content that they needed to learn, but they were also ninth through 12th graders. So everyone was learning different content. And how could I differentiate this instruction? So it was rather interesting to say the least. So through the years, I've tried different things. And I loved when the Bridges program came out because Bridges um, program had a routine and a structure to the standalone time. So I used their structure and ended up making folders to keep the stations organized between power words, independent writing, and independent reading. I use these with mostly Hispanic students at this point. I was teaching in a different setting with much smaller class sizes, so this was much more manageable. But even that, it seemed like Bridges just had so much to it, and it was a great program, great ideas, but for what I needed, and a lot of times I ended up being able to be one on one with students. It didn't really, I didn't need as much structure as Bridges provided. So I ended up, but what I did get out of the Bridges program was this essential question here. How do you get more power in the world? And really, for our English language learners, so many of them are doing what they have to do because of what their parents say, because of the economic situation of where they're coming from, or there's so many factors outside of the student's control. So I want my students to learn English because it will give them the opportunity to do whatever they want to do, not whatever they're told they have to do, or whatever they're limited by their lack of English. So again, I was thinking and thinking what would work for me, what would work for my students to take all this in. And so over time, based on like the Bridges curriculum, I made an organizational structure that allowed me to make the most of my time with my learners. And this is my routine where we start with talking, making sure they're okay, going into word work every day, and then a reading activity, and hopefully time for writing and talking. And you can see right on this thing that my schedule's changed. It's changed a lot, and it will probably continue to change as I become a better practitioner. I'm only in year 14, so I've still got things to learn before I retire. But the most important thing to me when my students come in the room is that they feel welcome. I always check and make sure that their Maslow needs are met. Did they get breakfast? Was everything okay on the bus this morning? Did they need any help with anything that's really bothering them? So I always want to check in and make sure emotionally they're doing okay, physically they're doing okay, because it's important. You can't move on unless you deal with whatever the problem is. So the second part of my routine is the word work, and here's an example of a student writing in sand. But word work in my mind has lots of different options. My favorite being uh, Words Their Way program. And they've recently come out with some books that are just for Spanish speakers that are learning English, but really it's a leveled system of word sorts where students learn to generalize the rules of English spelling by sorting the words every day. So this has the sound, this has the a sound. So um, dividing the words between the columns. After that, we go into reading. And I use ERLA at my school. So I had already assessed, I already know what level the kids are on. And based on their level, we would be working on something. So my 2B student right now is working on 2-syllable words. And really, we're working on the ED sounds when we are reading. And we're alternating between fiction and nonfiction. So that way we are doing. Uh, we're teaching him where he needs to be. He's learning about the past tense. He's practicing with the past tense, and he's getting better as he reads and writes with the past tense, because that's where he's kind of stuck with right now in his emerging level of learning. So again, we start with the word work. We go on to reading, alternating that. And then after we do the reading, there's usually some type of discussion. We are usually talking about what we're reading about, because otherwise, how would we, how would, how can we make sense of it? We want to make sure the comprehension is there. We want to make sure the student is learning to maybe retell and get better in his knowledge of what he just read about, and knowledge of the whole process of reading and understanding what you read, because it's a lot of thinking and students need to learn that, and it's a lot of talking about the text. Finally, we end with some writing, a quick text response, usually based on what we just talked about, and always using words from the text to words from the question to start our answers. And so that right there is my whole organizational structure for my standalone ENL time that I use every day, whether I'm virtual or in person. Sometimes the reading is more focused on math, but that's it in a nutshell. Thanks for watching.